City. Is it okay that I have an unfair advantage over everybody else?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I've always thought so too. So without further ado, we're going to bring up Joe. Joe is the 1031 Pro. I say it because it rhymes. He is phenomenal. And this is the unfair advantage that you as an investor can have. I have spent over $120,000 in taxes that I should not have, that I could have rolled. And $120,000, you guys know the rule of leverage in this game, right? I could have bought 5 times that in real estate. I could have bought $600,000 worth of house. But I didn't because I decided I wanted to pay taxes because I didn't know anything about 1031 exchanges. So you guys are going to get an unfair advantage over anybody else who wasn't here today and who doesn't go back and watch this video. Is that cool? I think so too. Joe, come on up, bro. Give him a round of applause. Guys,
I appreciate Walter inviting me, and I appreciate all of you guys being here. My company is RI 1031 Exchange Company, and I started it 5 years ago with my mom, Barbara, and she's here with us in the front row if you want to wave. She's a true tax expert, former IRS agent, and it's been great working with her, and exchanges have been really important lately, especially with the market conditions, with sale prices as high as ever. So I'm going to start off going through a lot of the basics of 1031 exchanges to get everyone just to a nice basic understanding. And as we go on, we're going to dip into more and more complex aspects of it because it can get very complicated, but I don't want that to scare anyone off. That's something that's kind of a downside, all the misinformation there is out there about 1031s. And after I go over some basics, I'm going to sit down with Walter, and he's going to interview me, and we'll get into more of those details. So, first of all, what is a 1031 exchange? For anyone that has no idea, it's a process that you can go through when selling and reinvesting in business or investment property that allows you to not have to pay the capital gains taxes on the sale. And the taxes you would owe get rolled into that replacement property that you end up buying. And you'll see how many strategies can arise from that we'll get into. And 1031 refers to the section of the tax code that it falls under. And that's what outlines all the rules and regulations you need to follow. And there are a lot of rules, and the closer you look at them, the more there seem to be, but the important thing is to understand the fundamentals of it. And the original intent of Section 1031 is to not unfairly tax investors when they have an ongoing investment. So the government didn't want to make people pay those taxes when they're basically keeping their investment going. And it encourages more investment back in the U.S. because you can't sell U.S. property and invest in a foreign country with a 1031. So, some of the most important rules, you need to use a qualified intermediary to do a 1031 exchange. That's what our company is. And we basically ensure that everything about your transactions complies with the IRS code. And we do a lot of interfacing with the attorneys, the realtors involved, lenders, and CPAs for planning as we go. And I'll talk a little more about what we do later on in an example. Another extremely important rule is the time frames involved. So these are time bound. You have a certain amount of time to identify replacement property once you sell, and a certain amount of time to close on that property. And the first, that ID period, you have 45 days from your closing to identify replacement property. That's the important time frame, and that's what kind of puts pressure on people when they enter an exchange. The clock starts ticking, and it's always best when you go into it with as clear an idea of what you want to reinvest in. That leads to the most successful exchanges. And closing within 180 days, you have that's 6 months that you have to close. That's usually not an issue because if people are able to ID within 45, it would take some strange circumstance for that to totally fall through. And both properties involved, if you're selling one and buying one, need to be investment. It can't be your own residence. And you need to be buying in the same entity. So if you and your wife sell property, you and your wife need to buy. Or if you're selling in an LLC, that LLC needs to be the buyer on your replacement property. So it helps to kind of get an idea of the 1031 process. So we'll go through a quick example. Let's say 10 years ago you bought up a handful of properties, and one of those properties seems to be causing the most problems for you, problem tenants, it's a tough area, whatever the reasons might be. And you want to sell that and get that money into something like your other properties that aren't giving you as much trouble. Off the bat, you list the property and you get under contract. That's the time you want to reach out to a qualified intermediary. You call us and we'll start working with you and we'll get under agreement prior to your closing. That's crucial. And it's heartbreaking when someone calls up and says, I just closed last week, I'd like to do a 1031 exchange. That's not going to fly, unfortunately. So even just knowing that, you need to get this arranged before you close is crucial to know. So leading up to the closing, we get involved with the closing attorney. We get 1031 instructions out to them, and there's certain language that needs to be on the settlement statement. And also, when it comes to the closing itself, one of the rules is that the taxpayer cannot be touching the funds. They can't have any access to the money during the exchange period. So what we do as a qualified intermediary is we escrow your proceeds from that sale, and then when it comes to your replacement property, we'll put the money forward and wire it for your second closing. After you close, you're within that 45 ID period, 45 days, and we'll say you pick out your properties. I'll explain that a little more. There's certain rules when it comes to IDing property, and it's a formal process. We have a form that we get out to you after you close, where you can typically identify up to 3 properties regardless of value, and that's what most exchanges utilize. But just so you're aware, there's a few other rules where if you want to sell one property and maybe reinvest in 4 or more, there are rules that allow that. One is called the 200% rule, where you can identify more than 3 properties as long as the total fair market value doesn't exceed 200% of your sales price. And again, don't get too worried about the details on it. It's not stuff you should worry about memorizing, but just be aware if you want to reinvest in more than 3, it's something you can do. Also, the 95% rule is you can list any number of properties as long as you actually reinvest in at least 95% of them. And that's a rare case, but a hypothetical where that could happen is if someone sells a $1 million property and wants to reinvest into a bunch of lots of land, they can do that with a 1031. If they're closing on everything they ID, it would still work for 1031. And within that ID period, you can make changes to the properties you're listing on it up until that 45th day. So if you list a few that you have your heart set on, and a few of them fall through, they get bought up by other people, you can still make changes and keep your 1031 alive. So we'll assume you ID the property you really want that you were planning on, and maybe a few backup options. We always encourage people to do that. Leading up to your closing on that property, similar on the first leg of it, we'll work with the closing attorney, get them the language we need on the settlement statement, and then we'll have the money in escrow for your closing. And after that, as long as you're closing within the 180 days, that would be a successful exchange. After that, we get all the documents. There's certain exchange documents we draft for each closing and our agreement. We get all that into a binder for our clients, and that makes it easy for their tax preparer to report these at the end of it. and that's on the form 8824, where they utilize our summary for just a quick way to make sure it gets reported properly on their tax return. So with 1031 exchanges, you can do a lot of creative things that I'm going to get into with Walter. And like I said before, there's a lot of misconceptions. People have come to us with really strange ideas about how they should work, and a lot of the times we kind of shed some light on that. So the most important thing is for you guys to have that strong foundation where you're able to look out for situations when you can make use of a 1031, and you'll know kind of the variety of ways you can do that. So keep that in mind as Walter and I go through some questions. And if you have any questions that we don't cover, I definitely encourage you to bring those up after we finish up here. And it really is one of the most powerful tools as an investor. Most of our clients are saving, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on their situation. If it's a high dollar property that they've owned for 20 years, with depreciation factored in, the tax they would owe is extremely substantial. So whenever you can make use of these opportunities, it's good to. You're not always planning to sell, but situations come up where you want to have that knowledge so you're flexible and able to react and properly make use of this stuff. So, Walter, you ready for some questions? I'm ready.
Yeah, man. Hold on, that's my side, man.
My bad.
Oh, let me make sure I got you in here. Guys, are you getting this so far? This cool stuff? Yeah? Is it cool that we're doing like 2 sessions that are this? I didn't realize the mayor was going to come in and drop bombs like that. Did anybody see that coming? I didn't either. So like this is, I know we're overwhelming you guys. I'm sorry, right? That's considered over-delivering. I'm okay with that in the business. All right, we can see Joe's face. Joe, say hi to Facebook Live.
Hello, Facebook Live.
And I've got my drink here. Ron, are there still books over there? I want to give some stuff away. Who wants something for free? Oh. All right, I need you guys to do me a favor, because nothing is really for free. Can you, if you see a seat that's empty in front of you, please fill it. Move forward. I want to kill that back row. Let's just get rid of that. You guys got like 30 seconds to do it, and go. The people I see stand up get a free something. All right, so in fact, just come up here. If you're somebody who sees a seat and intends to take it in front of you, come up here and grab something from it. Ron, can I get $3? And who wants a free drink? Who seriously wants a free drink? But move forward. No, you guys are already in the right spot. All right, who moves forward? Show me hands. Be honest, who moved forward? Who here already has my book? And move forward. 2 hands up. That's a 2-hand move. You didn't move forward, you've been there. Alright. Alright, so you already have my book. Do you mind just spin the camera this way so you can see what's going on? It's me doing things. It's cool. There we go. And you, my friend, get a free book. Who else moved forward? I saw a whole bunch of people. I lost track. You're right there. You have a book yet? Or do you want free book? This is the only place in the world where somebody chooses a book over booze. That's the solution. Thank you. You want the book? All I gotta do is get drinks away now. Give these guys a round of applause. Who wants to move forward?
Yeah, I'm the same boat.
Alright. If they want the book, we're going to trade those tokens for books and then pass that drink to somebody else. Sounds good? Please, you guys. Generous people. Give everybody who's participating a round of applause. I appreciate you guys. Also, you guys are awesome, just in general, for showing up tonight. This is a Thursday night. What do people normally do on a Thursday night? What shows are playing right now? Football, there's all sorts of things that can distract you from making money. One of the unfair advantages, I talk about these a lot, is that while everybody else cares about football, I care about building a network, right? I care about learning about 1031 exchanges. While everybody else is having fun and partying, we're doing something that nobody else wants to do. You get that there's nobody as strange as you in this city right now. All right? You guys are doing something completely different. So give yourselves a round of applause for being a little different. Look, I got a really cool question to ask you that I did not come up with.
I bet they're great.
I've also heard of these 1031 fact interview with Walter. Am I reading too much?
No.
All right, so I've also heard these referred to as like-kind exchanges. Does that mean if I sell a duplex, I need to buy a duplex for it to qualify?
That's a great question, Walter.
I'm taking full credit for this.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's actually one of the big misconceptions with 1031s, that if you sell a specific type of real estate, you need to reinvest in that type of real estate. That's not true, and fortunately for us investors, you can actually reinvest in any type of real estate from any type of real estate. And the idea of like-kind exchanges was more relevant a couple of years ago, when you could also do them with non-real estate, such as collectible artwork or, equipment and fleets for shipping and things like that, boats. That's when the idea of like-kind was more important. But when it comes to us with real estate, you can sell a lot of land and buy a multifamily. You can sell the duplex, buy a single family. The sky's the limit. We've had clients do interesting things, whether it's selling cell towers or, doing commercial investing from residential, things like that are all fair game for 1031s.
So one of the strategies that I really like that I see a lot of people doing is somebody in Boston sells their 2-family and then they move down here and they buy a 6-family with some of the funds and they buy themselves a single family in Cambridge or in Boston, right? They shift that wealth a little bit, so they split off some so they're still getting paid and they've locked in their capital and they've protected it, and they've still got the luxury item that they wanted to purchase. They've still got the home. Instead of living in the 2-family, now they've got the single family and they've moved off and they've got the split. The other side of it is we see the older landlords who've been landlords forever and they're done with tenants, shifting their 3-family and selling down into a single family or a condo to simplify their lives.
There's a lot of strategies we see like that. The idea of going from really hands-on active investments into more passive investments is something we've come across a lot, whether it's selling the multis and getting down to single families, or selling a bunch of multis that they've been managing and getting into one triple net leased commercial property. That's a good end goal for a lot of our clients, wind up in that situation with a fully passive income.
I say the same thing. I'm like, all I want to do is build a massive portfolio and to make it one building.
Nice,
right, like that would be
then
the
you're on a
ideal.
beach.
Get a whole bunch of units and then pyramid them into one building and be done with it. Have private manager lives on site and just kind of run it.
Yep.
So thank you for answering this very unique question I came up with.
Happy to.
So if I own a duplex, which I sold my last one last year and I paid taxes on, very embarrassing.
Thanks.
And I currently rent one unit while live in the other, am I allowed to do a 1031 exchange with it?
Well, you're bringing up the idea that you lived in part of it, and like I said, you can't do an exchange with your own residence. But if it is a multi-unit, you can do what's considered a partial exchange. So you would only be eligible to use that rented portion for the 1031, but that's still tax you can defer. And you pay tax on 50% there.
I expected that because I once sold a 3-family that I owned and I paid tax on the 2 units that I did 1031 exchange. So I recall paying taxes on the things I could have not paid taxes. So
You like something out of the city.
That's it. It's my silent business partner who doesn't help. But he's in on every deal.
Wait, so if you're living in one of the units, that one unit, don't you still have the qualification of $250,000?
Yep, the 121 exclusion, exactly.
Right, or 500 if you're married.
Yep, exactly.
Depending on how the numbers shake out, you can move into an apartment for a month or two, have a tenant in there, right?
Yeah.
And now the whole thing's investment property as well.
Correct.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
For a moment,
I did at the beginning, yeah.
you have to be holding the property surrender. It's not defined.
Barb.
The time period is not defined in the code, but if you just convert personal to rental for a month or two, that certainly would be allowed. Most CPAs like to see a year or so before it's no longer personal.
Thank you, Barbara. Give her a round of applause. I know Joe mentioned it, Barbara is going to be your main resource networking throughout afterwards. You just ask her any question you have, she will answer. But she is not the public speaker that Joe is. And she did not come up with this awesome list the way he did. Actually, I don't know. Maybe you did.
No, that's all me.
So that was all you.
I'm good for something.
A lot of things. Sales. So the next one is, if I don't reinvest equal to or more than the sale price, does the 1031 fail?
So that's the rule of thumb. To have a fully tax-deferred exchange, you need to reinvest equal to or more. But again, like with selling something you lived in part of and rented part of, you could do a partial exchange with it, and you would only be taxed on the difference there.
Yep.
So also a case similar to that is if you're selling, want to do an exchange, but you need some cash at that closing of your sale, maybe you owe someone some money, you can take 20 out, pay tax on that, but still do an exchange with the majority of your proceeds.
All right.
Question?
On that, why wouldn't you just pay for the property and then do cash out refi? Is there a penalty?
It's just if you needed the money in that shorter term. Yeah, so
Not 3 weeks later.
yeah, if your exchange might wind up taking 3 months, that might be a problem. You
And
know?
let me ask a qualifying question. Who in here owns property they're thinking about 1031 right now? Hands up. Yeah. Frank, you gonna keep it all?
Dude, I already know how to do this.
I'm just saying, but you're gonna 1031. So there's 3 people in the room right now, plus myself. So four of us who own enough, who are looking at doing these moves. You will want to learn them now so you can plan them out for the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, there's some bigger picture ideas that are going to come up. I just have a feeling in some of your questions. So
Are you looking at my notes?
I'm not. So again, just the knowledge is huge. Even if you're not in the position right now to be selling off, a bunch of properties and 1031ing, you want to know it on the onset so that in the grand scheme of things, you can get the most out of 1031s.
That's exactly right.
Question?
We're gonna hold the questions to the end, and I know that the 4 of us are probably gonna beat the heck out of him later on. So they're great questions. At the end, we'll make sure that we answer all of them. So thank you guys for the questions, and thank you for this list that I can run into next. Can I use 1031 funds towards improvement on a replacement property?
You can. And
I didn't know that. Okay, that's a cool one.
so this is a big one. This brings up another type of exchange. Up until now, we've talked mostly about what's considered a forward exchange. You sell a property, then over time you reinvest in a property, and that's that. But with these construction exchanges, it's called, you can use your proceeds to improve the replacement property. It gets a lot more complicated, and I'll tell you why in a sec, but just a quick example of when it might come up. If you sold for $300,000 and the property you really want is $200,000, you'd pay tax on the difference. So if you want to make it fully tax deferrable with one of these types of exchanges, you can spend the money to bring it up to that $300,000 mark,
Nice.
and then it's fully deferrable. Why it's more complicated and more expensive to do is because the IRS won't allow you to own the property during the exchange. So what we do as the qualified intermediary is create an entity called an exchange accommodator title holder that basically parks that property for the exchange period. And on the tail end of it, after it involves management agreements for carrying out all the construction. On the tail end of it, we consummate the exchange by having another closing with that entity, and that gets it into your name after it's up to value. So it's complicated, but it's
Did anybody get
available.
lost during that? Yes? It's recorded. We can go back and pull the tape. We're going to be okay. Well, not the tape, right? The Facebook Live. I'll be downloading. We're going to put it in YouTube. I'm probably going to transcribe this because a lot of what you just said, I'm like, we're on section 6. We need to know the question that we need to review that. So is there a certain number of years I need to hold my replacement property? That's a good question.
Yeah, we started talking about this, and there's no black and white in the code that specifies, but the rule of thumb that most practitioners go by is hold it for at least 1 full year,
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
which would get the rental income onto 2 tax returns, which would be considered proof that it was your intention to rent out the property and hold it for investment in that sense.
Right, that's one of the keys that when I've talked to 1031 guys like Joe is intent. You have to have the intent to show that you're renting, right?
Exactly.
Show a rent roll, show that you're doing it. It really helps to actually have the intent to keep it, right? And when we purchase, all of our intent is buy and hold forever, and then we only sell when we see equity rise. We see the equity get to the point where the ROI is terrible now, and it doesn't make sense to refinance. That's the only time we go and we resell. So it's about intent. Like, the intention is to hold indefinitely. I had one that I didn't intend to hold indefinitely that I did hold for a very long time. So I always plan to hold them no matter what when you go to closing. So can I sell a property and reinvest it into multiple properties? I know the answer to this one, so go ahead.
You can, and I kind of got on when discussing the ID period, how you can identify multiple properties. You can sell one, reinvest into a bunch, and that comes down to another idea of your strategy changing. You want just expansion, get more doors under your belt, more units. You can sell that high dollar property and expand from there. 1 for 3 we've seen.
I personally worked a deal with a guy who sold his 2-family in Cambridge for $1.2 million, and then took all of the funds and came down and bought 18 units in Fall River. Retired the next day.
Yep.
He's now worked since. He just shifted. He was already on the edge of retirement. He said, "Look, I'm done," and now he's got 18 units, so there's cash flowing for him.
Exactly.
And he's got whatever his annuity was, and this is just additional funds. So
Yeah.
and this was multiple buildings. I was a part of the transaction. I had a 6-family to sell, and there were 3 families and 4 families that pulled it all together. So you can be whatever combination you want. See, new stuff. That's
Yeah.
31, bro.
And there's one.
Wow,
You just have to be careful with the timing, of course.
I got the rest of it. All right. How about selling multiple properties and reinvesting into one single property? This is, by the way, I don't want to give it away, my retirement strategy.
Okay. Yeah.
Does this work?
This works. So this is the flip side of the last question. Can you sell a handful of properties, reinvest into one mutual property? You can, and that's a strategy, like I was saying, a lot of people use to get into the more passive investments. Get out of the multis if you have a handful of them into that commercial unit. That's really
Or that
Powerful
one
step.
beautiful $30 million house down in Florida where you just say goodbye to everybody and you just pay it all off. So it's 1031 exchange. I'm down with that. I'm not
If you're
down. I
renting
do
it
not
out
condone this whatsoever. Unless you're like Donald Trump and you buy like Mar-a-Lago and you turn it into a golf course that cash flows for you, and
This
then
is proper.
that makes sense. In which case, you've won. So what happens if I fail to identify replacement properties? This is really the major fear that most, when I'm looking at, the reason I've always avoided it is I want to line something up and sell at the same time, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, this is a concern a lot of people have, is the pressure of being in the 45-day period and not winding up with property identified. What happens in that case is your exchange fails and we return your money on day 46, but you're no worse off for wear other than being out our exchange fee. You would just treat it as if you sold the property without ever entering a 1031.
I assume the exchange fee is something like $10,000.
It is not, it is
It's $15,000.
$1,250
It's always the
for a
same.
forward exchange. We charge a flat rate.
Is that cool to charge a flat rate? I would. I'd be percentaging all of you guys. Anyway, give them a round of applause for a flat rate. That's perfect. So the other side to that is, where are wholesalers at? Wholesalers, guys who know how to find property. So pay attention. If you got a wholesaler next to you, you might want to get their number because these guys are the gold when you're trying to find and identify the next property. Does that make sense? Is it cool that you don't have to have a 45-day issue? You can just be like, all right, solve the problem by my wholesaler, find me a deal. Wholesalers, how long is your contract? It's like 45 days, right? You get it under contract, you got to sell it quick. So same problems, right? We'll solve each other's issues. So the next one is there a way to do a 1031 if I need to close on my replacement property before I close on my sale?
Another great question.
Do we call it the reverse 1041?
We do.
Yes! I'm good. All right, give me a round of applause. Reverse 1041 exchange.
So
I'm
again,
getting good. No, I'm getting cocky now. I'm sorry. I'm going to tone this down.
up there with the construction exchanges, this brings up the other complicated exchange, and it's called a reverse exchange. And the case, like you said, it's when you need to close on that replacement property first. And the problem, well, not the problem, but the reason it's more complicated and more expensive again is because you can't own both properties during the exchange period by the IRS's rules. So we need to create one of those entities again, park it in that entity until we park your your relinquished property until you eventually sell that.
No, I don't see this question here. I have a legitimate question. You may have answered this earlier.
Okay.
What kind of entities work this way? What kind of, are we talking trusts? Are we talking LLCs?
We create an LLC for that,
Okay.
and it's just a single member disregarded.
Okay.
But one more big thing about the reverse exchanges is some people really like doing these instead.
I think I would,
Yeah, because it takes all of the pressure on the 45-day period
Yep.
out entirely. Once you buy that replacement property, you're simply identifying your own property you already own that you're going to sell. So the whole process is just kind of flip-flopped, and it gives some people a lot of peace of mind. If you're going into an exchange where you have a ton of gain at stake and you would owe, six-figure amounts, you don't want to risk something going haywire during the exchange, properties fall through, you can't end up, closing a deal.
Right.
You can protect that 1031 succeeding by doing a reverse exchange in those cases.
So for the guys who are doing 1031s, not the reverse kind of the ideal way. I see Frank shaking his head. I gotta get out of that.
So,
Yeah.
the only problem with reverse exchange is you have less pressure, but it costs you money.
Yeah, it's more expensive.
You need the cash flow.
Okay. Oh, right. Because you gotta come up with your own cash, and that's.
Yeah, it creates financing issues for a lot of clients, and
Yeah.
a bank isn't going to want to lend to this entity we just created
Right.
yesterday for the purpose of this. They have issues with that, and but when people can do it and they don't need all that money from their sale, it's helpful for what it's good for.
Give Frank Padalano a round of applause for nodding his head. That's valuable stuff. I'll go back in a minute, Dave. Yep.
Does the timeline work the same?
The timeline does work the same. So since the 45 days is kind of arbitrary there, you just need to be closing on some of your property within 180 days.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
It's called question 11.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yep.
I think.
Can you do a 1031 with a property you're flipping? Anybody in here consider doing that? I've considered it.
It's problematic. And in most cases, the answer is no, unfortunately for our flippers. When you're in the business of flipping properties, the IRS would view the houses themselves as your inventory, which doesn't get the same capital gain treatment that it would otherwise have. So
Yeah.
for that reason, you typically can't. What you can do in that realm is, buy a property, rehab it, rent it out for a while, and then
I'm kidding, Mark. Yes.
no air quotes, it's legit. Rent it out, and then, circumstance might say it's time to sell, and then you can still do it. You want to do it for a year.
Intention.
A year and 1 day.
Yeah, a year and 1 day.
So with doing a flip, you've got to remember this is not an investment. When you're doing a flip, you're buying yourself a job. You can't retire off of flips. It's just income, and you get taxed that way. You get taxed self-employment tax, and you get taxed actual capital gains. So you're going to pay more in taxes doing flips. This is one of the major flaws that I've had in my business. Is I was doing flips thinking I was making money, and I was making money, but I was also getting taxed money. So it doesn't necessarily make sense sometimes to do the flip. Sometimes it makes sense to hold it longer, refinance the property, or hold it long enough to 1031 exchange it, and just use a more hybrid, more planned, thought out approach for investing. It just makes more sense in the long term, because those taxes are not cool. Not cool. But I don't mind. This is, I look at it as a charity. It's like me giving back to the community,
You're a good guy.
and they build schools with it, and give me a round of applause. Anybody who's ever paid around $100,000 in a year, give you guys a round of applause. What is it?
Every year.
Every year, yeah. So, but it's okay. This is what we do. It's like giving back. Can you do a 1031 with a second home or a vacation home?
These are also problematic, and people ask us about this a lot. So whether it's something you're selling or you want to reinvest in, the problem is how much personal use you spend at the property. And the rules here is you can spend the greater of either 14 days at the property or 10% of the amount of days you rent it out. So if you rent it out for the majority of the year, 300 days, you could spend a month there and it would still qualify for a 1031. But, when it comes to a vacation home where you might spend the summer there, that's not going to qualify. And granted, there's no 1031 police kind of crawling around checking on how much time you're spending in your properties. You don't want to risk it being audited and your 1031 failing.
And Barbara will make sure that you're not doing that. She's gonna make sure
She
you're
will.
following the rules and everything's
I'll
going.
make sure you know the rules.
Yeah, we make sure you know the rules.
Yes. We don't want the liability of their decisions. Gotcha.
Exactly. I mean, you don't want to do things like change your mailing address there if it's 1031 property. So
This is true, and this is, okay, guys, don't do any of the questionable stuff. I'm not using NLP on you saying do the question. I'm saying do everything legitimate, the right way, because it lasts longer in the business. You'll just last a whole lot longer if you think the right way. I joke around, but at the end of the day, I say it in jest. But I do recall that we're Facebook Live right now. So I don't need any of this coming back to me later on. But more importantly, I have real estate investment trusts. Anybody here invest in REITs? Does anybody here know what a REIT is? Oh, good God. Okay. Get educated. That's cool. That's going to be a whole other thing where we talk about the REITs. But to me, real estate investment trusts are a great way to get passive income. My dividend yields on these are anywhere between 8% and 18%. And the ones that are on the higher end are mortgage-backed securities, which everybody's scared of them, but right now, because they're so stringent on the rules, I'm perfectly fine with running those 18, 16% return on investments, the dividend yields. So REITs are something.
Quarterly or annual?
What is it?
Is that quarterly or annual?
Those are annual. Quarterly, please. that return on investment is closer. Yeah, no. You have to do a flip to get that, right? Or maybe some cash flow property will get you 36% annually. So you're getting close. Yeah. All right. So can I reinvest into a REIT? Because I got REITs and they're passive. I don't have to do anything for them.
that's what people like about them. You cannot reinvest into a REIT with a 1031. However,
Okay. I love it.
there's something nearly identical that was blessed by the IRS,
Yeah.
and it's called a DST, a Delaware Statutory Trust, which is essentially a REIT that was considered and classified as real estate. So with the actual REIT, since it's not real estate that your money is going into, it wouldn't qualify. But it is with the DST, as similar as they are. So we've had several clients, sell off their property, get into these DSTs, and kick back and retire,
Yep.
and treat it that way. One of our early clients was partners on a restaurant, and he reinvested his portion into a DST. It's something that most of the clients we've had that do them wind up being happy with them. But
And you're talking on DSTs, just so you guys are aware. I talked to a 1031 guy a long time ago, and this guy, he was like, "Yeah, I've saved $500,000 on my 1031s over the years." And I was like, "Well, what do you own now?" Right? Because that's how we all think. And he's like, "DSTs," and I was like, "I'm not going to Google it because those letters may come up with something I'm not going to understand." Right? So he explained that it's very similar to a REIT, except it actually works with a 1031 exchange. You can roll them through. In stocks, you have something called a 1041 exchange, which is very similar rules, but they don't play well together. Whereas with a DST, you actually can do that. You can retire on it. The problem that young investors see is that the interest rates are like 4, 5, 6%. They're very low. But the benefit that older investors see is that, hey, it's 6%. I don't have to do anything to it, and it's just cash flow no matter what. It's a great investment, especially when you've stacked up the 1031 so many times. So great answer, and I really wish that it was more simple because I like the REITs I have. Can I do another 1031 selling property that I acquired in a past 1031?
you can. So this is the idea that you keep doing 1031s over and over throughout your investing career. And
Like that gentleman did. He just
Exactly.
bought the pyramid up, and then he went to a DST at the end.
And the big idea here, actually I might have to answer your next question.
Well, I mean, as long as you're answering them in order, I can just skip it.
No, hit the next one.
Yeah? I'm going to crush the next one.
Feels like a good time for it.
So if I eventually sell my 1031 replacement property and I don't do another 1031 property, I have to pay all of my deferred taxes at that time? Question mark.
You would. So you'd have to bite the bullet if you decide to do that. So you've been 1031ing, property into property, and then eventually you sell one that you don't do a 1031 with, you would owe that tax burden at that time. And that's a big chunk of change typically. However, this gets into the idea of some of the end game strategies you can do with your 1031s. So we call this strategy swap till you drop. where all you have to do is die with the properties.
Highest of fives. Which is the strategy. Has anybody done cold calling before? Where are cold callers at? My wholesalers, my cold callers, my real estate agents. All right. You call sellers, and this is what they say. Guaranteed, you'll always get this one guy or gal on the phone. They say, I'm going to die in this house. They actually could die in the house.
And the idea with the 1031 is you work it into your estate planning, and the huge benefit is any property that you pass away owning, your heirs would receive a step up in the tax basis at the time of death. So, although it's not too glamorous to think that, yeah, I'll just plan to die.
We're going to die.
We're gonna have to.
It's guaranteed. It's
So-
the one thing, that and taxes. So
Yeah, so this is about
this is a
both.
tough crowd.
So, when that happens, your heirs could sell the next day and have no gain. And that's huge if,
Yeah.
you just get the passive stuff on the end of your career.
Yep.
As long as you don't need the money from an entire sale where you pay all the tax, it's a good way to go.
So this is a super secret strategy that a lot of the rich don't talk about. Just make sure your kids outlive you, and they'll work out pretty well, right? Just don't let them go first. Protect your kids, like raise them well so they can have great lives. And then when you die a timely death, you leave them this great portfolio, basically tax burden free. It's a good strategy if you're planning ahead and doing it in advance. We'll come to that because we're just about there. My next question came up with it on my own. Are there any 1031 strategies you could use if the market cycle peaks and starts heading down? Which, by the way, anybody think it's going to do that? Eventually? Soon? Now? Who knows, right?
Yeah, a lot of people, that we talk to get the sense that it's so high right now that we could be looking at a turn in the overall market. So if, for example, you have properties that do well in terms of appreciating as the market does well, single families do it better than multis, but both of them do.
Yep.
You could take this into consideration and do a 1031 exchange where you sell them off and get into something like a long-term leased commercial property that you'll get this steady, dependable income throughout the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it winds up being, and then, ride out the market dropping with that in place, and then when you feel it bottom out, just do a 1031 on that end with the commercial property, start mopping up the, budget properties you started with after they've become more affordable, and then you have those to ride the whole way up again. So, it's hard to predict the market, but there are ways you can think about getting yourself into the best position to let that growth or fall work with you.
I like that, and that's absolutely true because you can't gauge what the market's going to do. Like I thought in February when I saw the market start turning and slowing down, I was like, oh, this is it. And then interest rates came down and the market just went back up, right? And again, next month or this month they're dropping interest rates again. So we're seeing a slowdown in the market. It's probably going to put us back going forward again. And very likely the next 18 months we're going to see us continue this going up stage. Even though all signs point to a drop, everybody's belief system is a drop, it's still going to take some time. There's still a stretch the market has to do its piece. Anybody familiar with the inverted yield curve that happened? It's happened a number of times now. So it takes 18 months for that to actually take effect. So we've got still a stretch in theory. Don't quote me on any of this. Don't quote me on any of this. But theoretically, there's still some time. And we don't know what that could hold. It could be 2 years still. It could be 3 years still. Any advice you would give to clients to help them have successful exchanges? I just did an audio book, and oh my God, let me tell you what, my reading out loud skills is like, God bless you all. But it's getting better, so this has actually been a lot of exercise for me. So
Good.
I got a couple more
Happy to
chapters.
help you.
So what advice would you give for people to get a successful 1031 exchange?
One of the biggest things is to really have a clear picture of what you want to reinvest in. That's what goes the longest way in terms of your 1031. We see them fail when people jump into the 45 days having really no clear clue. They say, oh, I'll start reaching out to realtors. You can do some planning before your sale and get these things in place. You can even get under contract on your replacement property before you sell yours, and then still try to sell yours first so you don't have to do the reverse if that's not your plan. But the clearer that picture is, the better. And also making a good choice with who you use for qualified intermediary. You don't want to just get some internet hack or someone you don't know well. You want someone who goes the extra mile.
So that said, does anybody want Joe's phone number? Do you think it'd be interesting or great to have texting him like I get to whenever you have a question
It's
at all
not great.
times? Is that something you'd like?
We have some marketing materials. We got some brochures and business cards that we'll put up too at
Does
the end.
anybody have my cell phone number?
And he's got mine.
Really? That's it? Who is missing my cell phone number? All right, write it down now. Put it in your phones. 774 526 4796 and text me your name. Just 774 526 4796 and just text me your name and then I will text you whatever question you have attached to that. If you want Joe's number, if you want the 1031 guy's number so you forget all the details and you say, hey, what's his number? I will text it to you. If you want information from the mayor, just ask me, I will text it to you. Do not call me. Do not. All my friends know, my agents, our top agents in the room, no, do not call me, text me, and I will answer. It's just a matter of time. Being able to get to everybody is not as easy anymore as it used to be. That said, let's give Joe a round of applause. I got a little bit I want to say before we break. Thank you, man. You're awesome. Guys, was Joe not awesome? Yeah. Give him a round of applause. He was... All right, I learned things, and I've spent a lot of time asking him questions, asking questions to other 1031 guys. I've been in this for a while, trying to not avoid taxes, but my God, not pay more than I have to, right? That's really the strategy, because the government wants us reinvesting in real estate. Is everybody aware that the government, like the mayor mentioned earlier, needs us as investors buying bigger properties and investing and helping more people have housing, right? So Barb and Joe are your assets to allow yourselves to build bigger portfolios faster, right? The information you're putting in your head is going to allow you to be able to build these portfolios when we're doing landlord events, we're talking about raising tenants better, or we're doing exchange talks like this, we're talking about where to purchase with the mayor. These different tools are in your toolbox now so you guys can go out and you're armed to do things. I don't educate you to just educate you. You guys get this, right? I don't give you information just for you to sit in your hands and say, oh, well, I learned a lot, I'm so smart. I give you the information so you can take action. I give you a room, a network full of people who are doing the same things as you, so you guys can go out there and take action. I'm giving you the resources, I'm giving you the tools necessary to be successful. There's only 3 tools, right? You have to have people, you have to have skill, and you have to have money, right? So who here says that money's kind of an issue? Who here knows what I'm about to sell? Who here already bought it? Who bought the Get the Money event? Yeah, I love you guys. You guys are awesome. So is it okay if I talk about it for like 5 minutes? I'm talking about what it is, going to eliminate the need to get money ever again. You won't have to ever go hunt for money. Well, you'll have to hunt for it. You just won't, you'll know where it is. That sounds good? All right. Go to the website, waltermorello.com. Everybody know how to spell my name? Anybody know how to spell my name? Missing it? There it is, right there. waltermorello.com. It's $100. You can go on now, you can register for it. I'm going to teach you how to get private money. I'm teaching you how to have the conversation with hard money lenders. I'm going to teach you how to have the conversation with commercial lenders. I'm going to teach you how to have the conversation with residential lenders. There are still places where you want to invest with residential lending. There are places where hard money makes more sense than going commercial first. There are places where gap funding makes sense. Anybody familiar with gap and bridge funding? Bridge loans? Gap funding? These are tools that we use when the down payment doesn't exist. Right? Private money is something that you can raise very quickly when you know how to do it. We're going to teach you how to present to somebody who has money. We all know that the doctors, the attorneys, the engineers, they're making a lot of money. They're putting it in the bank because they're smart, cautious people, but they don't know how to invest in real estate because they're not like you guys. They're not aggressive. They're not like, hey, let me do it myself. Right? They're putting their money in the stock market, getting 3%, and they're clapping about it. All right? Anybody know those people? Anybody think that they exist? Think they're pretty prevalent? Yeah, they're out there, trust me. And they're frustrated. They're watching us play the game and they're saying, dude, I don't want to do what you do. I just want the ROI. I just want the return on investment. So we're going to teach you how to make the forms for them. Because here's the deal, they're not like you guys. You guys have no problem. You can visualize the future, see what the house is going to look like, see what it would be like. You know, when you're doing these tax exchanges, you're seeing it visually how it's going to work out. For them, they have to see the numbers. right? So we're going to give you the platform, the forms that we use to create the template to go and collect private capital. Is that cool? Is it cool that it's only $100 to never have to worry about money ever again? Yeah. And the reason I'm doing it is because I have to teach it anyway. I really do. I have to teach this class no matter what because I need my team aware of how to buy more property. Right? I run a real estate team, real estate agents. Where are my agents at? Put your hands up. All right, I got a bunch of agents in the room. You guys work with me? Or you're going to work with me eventually, Zach? I'm working on you. So, work in progress. Michelle, she's a work in progress. I'll bring you over, girl. I want to make sure my real estate isn't working. I want to make sure that they're aggressively building. I want to make sure that my team, my investors, the guys who I've trained to build their portfolios ethically, to do 1031 exchanges so they can get more capital out of their products and buy more, use tax-deferred programs so that they can get, not tax-deferred, tax grants, city grants, state funding so they can buy more portfolio. And then, like the mayor was mentioning, fix entire streets, entire areas together as a team. I want you guys growing. I don't care, and I mean this very seriously, about the other investors. I only care about my tribe. I care about you guys, because you guys are going to build in a way that nobody else will. Everybody else is selfish. They're like, oh, I'm going to build my one house and just doing that one thing, right? You guys are looking, how do I make more? How do I get more increase? How do I improve my entire portfolio? If I get to high five that guy for a day, helping his property, but raises my value, I'm going to do that. Does that make sense? If I go have a conversation, talk about, hey, we own all these houses on this street, let's go do something together, and we do something that raises the value of everybody, that's what we're building. So that's why I teach you guys. That's the reason, because hey, I'm invested here too. I'm going to continue buying, right? Me and Frank were just talking about a little while ago. Like some of the stuff the mayor said, it's stuff that if you don't utilize it, somebody else will. And here's what's even worse. If you don't use it and somebody else doesn't use it, it's just being wasted. Have you ever seen an opportunity and missed it? I'll take the opportunity. Yeah, me too. Me too. So, 2 opportunities tonight. One, you get to buy the book for $20. I'm selling it because, look, I want you to understand what's possible for you. Right? That's the reason I wrote the book. People ask the question, no, did you come for money? No, I didn't. Did you come with real estate knowledge? No, I didn't. My secret, and you'll see it in the book, is I will outgrind anybody. That's all it is. The book will tell you, right? It tells you, I will go through the worst. It doesn't matter to me. I'll do whatever it takes to get to what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to build a team. I'm looking to improve my city. I'm looking to make you guys a ton of money. I'm committed to you guys in the room because you guys are committed to yourselves. I've taught a lot of people. I taught real estate agents. I taught on both sides of the country. And my biggest problem after I teach is they walk away and they do nothing with it. And it bothers me so much. It's like, man, the money I got paid doesn't matter. I want something done with it. I want to see people successful, right? I want to see people doing things, improving the city and the community they live in. You guys are that opportunity for me, right? I'm very selfish. I'll be honest, right up front. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. I want to see my city better than Boston. I want to see Boston look at us and be like, man, I'm going to Fall River today. I'm not gonna deal with Boston right now, right? I'm out, right? Like that's how I perceive what we're doing. Right? I see New Bedford that way. I see Pawtucket that way. I see Central Falls that way. I want to see them coming down to the South Coast being like, thank God they put a train here. I'm getting out of Dodge. Does that make sense? It's going to take me a little while to do that. I can't do it on my own. You guys get this, right? Now, what's cool, we get rich doing it the whole time. Because the government has incentivized us to do this. The government wants to see us building houses. The government wants to see us building jobs. The city wants to see us building jobs. They want to see us creating more housing. This is what they're incentivizing us to do. You guys are getting that, right? The mayor told us so many different ways that we can get free funding, not just from the city, but from the federal government. The federal government, the IRS, gives you this ability to tax exchange, to defer taxes, so that you can continue doing what's right for the country. What the country truly needs, more housing. Right? It's a crisis, not just in our community, not just in Boston, it's across the entire country. You take your skill set that you're learning here and you go and you apply it. Now, the part where I was talking about with people, they're in this room, right? There's somebody in this room who knows things that you know, that you don't know. There's somebody in this room who's got skill sets that you don't have. You guys complement each other. Who here has heard me talk about DISC before? D-I-S-C? Yep. We understand that people who are S's and C's don't do what D's and I's do. Like there's opposite skill sets. Your partners are in this room, right? My partners are in this room. I work with a lot of you guys on different projects where we're all helping each other out and we're making more money together, right? So network in this room for the next 20, 30 minutes. drink with me at the bar. If you've got a book, you've bought the book, I will be signing them at the bar today because I've been talking for a lot and I'm a little thirsty, a little parched. Is that okay? Yeah, I drink with you guys? Is that cool? Yeah. All right. So that said, this event is how you get the money. It's going to solve the last problem. The last problem is that you have, maybe you've become aware that you have the people in the room. I've over-delivered on education today. You guys have enough information to go make some good purchases today. Am I right? You've got enough in your heads right now to say, I'm going to buy some property, I'm going to 1031, and I know I have an idea. You can go back and watch the tape. Not the tape, the live recording. You can go back and you can watch it, you can figure out where you're going to buy. He handed us where the properties are going to appreciate. He gave us the opportunity zones. Who asked the question of opportunity zones? Solid, right? He told us where they are. He's going to give us all the tools. Right? We know what to do when we get a small property that needs to be switched over to a bigger property. We know what to do when we have our high appreciation buildings and we got to roll them into a place that makes more sense, right? We have the tools. So now the people who don't have the money, right? We're the guys who don't have $100,000 in the bank right now. No, I'm not putting my hands up. But for people who don't have $100,000 in the bank, wouldn't it be cool to be able to go buy a $500,000 property right now? Yeah? So, it's going to be 4 hours. It's going to be October 12th. It's going to be at my office. I knocked down the wall. Did everybody see the picture I put on Facebook? I knocked down the wall so like now everybody can spread out and it doesn't have to be all in one little narrow lane. I'm still going to make you sit this way, I promise. I'm not giving you guys all that extra space. But now we can be there. We can for 4 hours. I'm not going to do 8. For 4 hours, I'm going to give you everything it takes to raise private capital. I'm raising $1 million right now. I'm personally going out and I'm hunting for $1 million for a project I'm working on. I'm going to teach you guys how to do exactly what I do. Right? Oh, Frank?
Where was the phone call? Where was the text?
Frank, I invited you tonight for this one reason.
All right, we'll talk.
So everybody can now watch me raise capital. That's, like I said, the money's in the room, right? The deals are in the room. The deal that I'm talking about, I got from this room. We were in Incognito, which Sandra in the back, she owns. She's selling, by the way, $350,000. Phenomenal business. And we were there, and somebody just said, hey, I got this deal for you, $1 million deal, who wants it? And I was like, yep, sign me up, I'll take that. And maybe me and Frank, I know they're going to charge me a lot of interest. I can already see it. It's okay if you pay interest. That's the whole point, right? You're making it on the other side. You're making a return on it. So the event is going to be October 12th at my office, East Main Street. We've got enough room for everybody there. What I'd like to do is get everybody to buy a ticket today, or tomorrow, or today, and then bring somebody with them. Does that make sense? Your $100 ticket gets you somebody else in the room with you. This business, you can't do it alone. You have to have a partner, whether it's your spouse, whether it's a friend, whether it's a cousin, whether it's a money partner, whether it's a contractor, whatever it is. You cannot scale this by yourself. I tried. I got the 22 units and I was ready to pull my hair out. Instead, my hair decided to do its own thing. And what are you gonna do? This is what God gave me. So I think it could have been the 22 units by myself. I don't know. I question these things. But you can't get to the level I'm going by yourself. And if you guys want to get to that next level and keep most of your hair, especially the ladies, please. We like the way you guys look with it. You have to have partners. You have to have people you trust. You have to have people you rely on. Mario's always saying if there's like 10, 11, 12 people on a deal. So you've got to be able to bring somebody you trust to work with on your transaction. So that's the reason the extra ticket is there with you when you make the purchase. Is that cool? Who's buying a ticket today? Get it up. Yep. Yep. No? Aquino, got you. That said, I'll be at the back, guys. Mix and mingle. Come ask me questions and shoot me a text. Anybody who wants Joe's number, I'm very serious about this. Shoot me a text. Because Joe he'll spend the time. Like, he's been so valuable to me. He just opens up and you saw what he did here where he just answered the question. No problem, sure, let me think about it. He will do that for you guys. Anything you want to know from the mayor, shoot me a text. I'll make sure that I get you that information. The mayor and I, we meet still, once a week. I'm not telling you where, because I know you guys come out there trying to get pictures with me. I'm cool. You can put all my pictures on Facebook. I'm about it. Guys, when you have a choice, go alterumbrella.com. Buy the tickets, $100. Even you on Facebook, bring a friend, but just shoot me a text and let me know who it is. This room I've qualified. This room I trust. Outside of this room, I don't know you yet. And we'll have to work on that. But shoot me a message, guys. Cheers.